AOA Karen calls 911 because I parked my bike in my own front yard. I never thought parking my own bike in my own yard would be a crime. But then again, I had never lived next to Karen before it all started. On a quiet Saturday morning, the sun was shining. The birds were chirping, and I had just returned from a ride around the neighborhood. I leaned my bike against the side of my porch, not thinking twice about it. Big mistake. I wasn't even inside for 10 minutes before I heard the dreaded sound of someone clearing their throat dramatically outside my window. I pee through the blinds, and sure enough, there she was. Karen standing at the edge of my property, arms crossed her face, twisted in disapproval as if I had committed an unforgivable act of suburban blasphemy. I sighed already, knowing where this was going, but I wasn't about to engage, not yet. Maybe she would get bored and walk away wishful thinking. A few seconds later, a knock rattled my front door. I took a deep breath, bracing myself before opening it. Karen didn't waste time. "You can't leave that there," she announced, gesturing aggressively toward my bike. I blinked. "Leave what? Where?" She let out an exasperated sigh as if I was being intentionally difficult. "Your bike in your yard, it's not allowed." I looked at my bike, then back at her. Says as who? She straightened her posture, as if she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. HOA regulations clearly state that all personal vehicles, including bicycles, must be stored out of public view. It's about maintaining the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood. I stared at her. It's a bike. Karen, not a junked car on cinder blocks. She pursed her lips. "That doesn't matter. Rules are rules." I crossed my arms. Well, I read the guidelines and nowhere does it say, I can't leave my bike on my own. Property. Kay's left eye twitched. It's implied. I raised an eyebrow. Implied. She let out a sharp breath. "Fine. I'll be filing an official complaint." "With the HOA, knock yourself out," I said, shutting the door before she could keep going. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, I found a bright red violation notice taped to my door. I ripped it off and read the text. Unauthorized outdoor storage, immediate removal required below it. In suspiciously Karen-likey handwriting was a note. Failure to comply will result in further action. I sighed, rubbing my temples. She actually did it. She filed a complaint over a bike. That's when I decided if Karen wanted a fight, I'd give her one. Instead of removing the bike, I went out and bought a second one, an even bigger one, and parked it right next to the first. Then I took a picture and sent it to the HOA with a simple note: define outdoor storage. Karen lost her mind, and the war had officially begun the moment I sent that picture to the HOA. I knew I had made a terrible yet hilarious mistake. Karen didn't just see it as defiance, she saw it as war. By the next morning, she had taken things to an entirely new level. I woke up to the sound of furious muttering outside my window. I peed through the blinds, and there she was, armed with a measuring tape. She was measuring the exact placement of my bikes. I stepped outside still in my pajamas and watched as she meticulously documented every angle, jotting notes into her ever-present clipboard like she was conducting a structural integrity report. "Karen, do you need help?" I asked, barely able to keep a straight face. She snapped her head up, eyes burning with pure, unfiltered rage. "I am gathering evidence for what I asked are my bikes breaking zoning laws now." Karen ignored me, muttering under her breath as she took another measurement. Finally, she stood up straight and declared, "You were in violation of the 24-inch rule." Dagner shrugged. I blinked the white. "What the rule?" "That states no personal items may extend more than 24 inches beyond the front plane of the house." I stared at her. "Karen, that rule is for fences and permanent structures." She didn't blink. "A bicycle is a structure." I covered my mouth to keep from laughing. "A bicycle is a bike. That is your opinion at that moment." Mark, legendary neighbor, an official Karen tormentor, strolled up with a giant inflatable flamingo under his arm. He took one look at Karen, then at my bikes, then back at Karen. "What's going on?" Karen jabbed a finger at the bikes. "Illegal outdoor storage." Mark nodded slowly. Then, without breaking eye contact, he set the massive flamingo down in his yard. Karen's jaw dropped. I folded my arms. So Karen is an inflatable flamingo, considered a structure too. She stormed off without another word. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't that night I was sitting on my couch enjoying a well-earned victory snack when I heard it, the sound of rustling. I crept to my window, peeking. Outside, and there she was. Ken was sneaking onto my property with a roll of caution tape. I could hardly believe my eyes. She was taping off my bikes like they were part of an active crime scene. I grabbed my phone and started recording. She was mid-row when I stepped outside. Karen, what the hell are you doing? She froze. Then, without missing a beat, she spun around and yelled, "Citizens! Our arrest!" I stared at her for what she gestured wildly. Illegal obstruction of community space. Mark, who had been watching from his porch, nearly choked on his drink. "Karen, you can't arrest someone over a bicycle." She ignored him. "I have already called the authorities." I let out a long sigh. "You called the police?" Karen smirked. "Yes. And when they get here, you'll be forced to comply." I couldn't wait to see how this played out because Karen had just called 90011 over a bike, and she was about to face reality. This squad car pulled up faster than I expected, and I could already see the officer rubbing his temples before he even stepped out. This wasn't his first Karen encounter. He adjusted his belt, approached with a sigh, and asked, "All right, what's the emergency?" Ken pointed dramatically at my bikes. The caution tape fluttering in the night. "Breeze, he is unlawfully obstructing the visual harmony of our neighborhood." The officer blinked. Then he turned to me, "Sir." I gestured toward the bikes. "They're parked in my yard." The officer nodded, took a deep breath, and then turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, this is not a police matter." Aaron gasped, and not a police matter. "Do you understand the severity of what's happening?" Mark, now fully invested, added, "Yeah, officer, he's really causing some serious bicycle devastation out here." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, unless these bikes are committing a crime, I suggest you let this go." Ken's face turned. "Scarlett? This is an outrage. Good night, ma'am." The officer walked back to his car without another word. Karen stood there fuming as the squad car pulled away. I turned to Mark, smirking. "So what do we do now?" He grinned. "I say we triple the bike count," Karen screamed, but Karen wasn't done. The fact that the police had refused to enforce her nonsense only seemed to fuel her unhinged determination. I knew she wasn't going to let this go quietly. The next morning, before I even had a chance to enjoy my coffee, I heard a knock at the door. Not a normal knock, but an aggressive law enforcement style pounding. I opened it to find 3 members of the HOA board standing there looking exhausted and uncomfortable. The lead member, Greg, sighed. "Look, I already know this is going to sound ridiculous, but we need to have a conversation about your, BIC situation." I raised an eyebrow. "My bike situation?" Greg rubbed his temples. "Karen has filed a formal complaint against you. And not just one, she has been sending emails. Letters and actual printed photographs of your yard every single hour. Since last night, we finally agreed to come out here because she wouldn't stop calling us." Mark, standing nearby, snorted. "She's escalating." "I like it." I crossed my arms. "And what exactly is the problem?" Greg sighed. "She insists that your bikes are a neighborhood safety hazard and are attracting criminal activity." I blinked. Attracting criminal activity? Are we under the impression that bike thieves travel in organized crime syndicates? Now, one of the board members, a woman named Lisa, muttered she said that large gatherings of unattended bicycles are known to encourage lawlessness. Mark wheezed. I rubbed my temples. "You all don't actually believe this, do you?" Greg shook his head. "Absolutely not, but we do have to address the complaint because legally, she filed it under the community dispute resolution process. So we're here addressing it. Can we just put something in writing that you'll consider moving them?" I smirked. "Sure, I'll consider it." Lisa pulled out a clipboard. "Great, just sign here." I took the pen, paused, then wrote, "I will consider doing absolutely nothing. Sign the bike owner." Lisa looked at it, shrugged, and tucked the paper away. Good enough for me. Karen, of course, was watching all of this unfold from her window, seething. I turned to Greg. "So what happens now?" He sighed. "Now, we go back, file this, and hopefully Karen moves on." She did not move on that evening. I heard a strange noise outside. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto my porch. Scanning the yard, my bikes were still there, but something was off. That's when I noticed the giant padlock wrapped around my bikes, chaining them all together. I took a step closer, and there attached to the lock was a note. It read, "Consider this a final warning. Bikes will be unpoed if not removed immediately." G-Bikes, Karen Mark walking up with his usual beer in hand, looked at the lock, then at me. "She padlocked your bikes." I nodded. "She padlocked my bikes." Mark took a slow sip, then grinned. "I say we take this to the next level, and that's exactly what I plan to do." Ain had officially crossed the line. It was one thing to whine to the HOA to flood their inboxes with pointless complaints to stalk my yard with a measuring tape, but actually padlocking my property. That was a new level of crazy. Even for her, I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture of the padlock and Karen's ridiculous note, and sent it straight to the HOA board with a simple message, so trespassing and property tampering are cool. Now Mark, still watching from the sidewalk, took another slow sip of his beer. "So what's the plan?" "Bolt cutters, blowtorch, dramatic chainsaw entrance." I smirked. "Oh, I have something better in mind instead of cutting the lock." I decided to one-up Karen at her own game. I went online and overnighted the biggest, most absurd bike rack I could find, the kind you see outside a school or a city park, built to hold a dozen bikes, and when it arrived the next morning, I set it up front and center on my lawn. Mark whistled. "Damn, that's a statement. Oh, I'm not done." I said, pulling out my next masterpiece, a large, professionally printed sign, "Welcome to Karen's Community Bike Park, sponsored by Nothing HOA Complant." We both stood back to admire the work. My two original bikes now had 10 new friends, all neatly locked up in the massive bike rack. And Karen, she was losing her mind from her window. I could see her pacing furiously, yanking open her blinds every few minutes like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I half expected steam to shoot out of her ears. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Greg from the HOA, dude. He said, as soon as I picked up, "What the hell did you do?" I grinned. "I'm simply complying." Karen wanted a bike free lawn, so I made sure every bike is neatly organized and stored properly. "Greg, look, we saw the padlock thing. That was definitely crossing the line, and we're dealing with it, but now she's filing another complaint about unauthorized bike storage expansion." I laughed, and honestly, we don't care, but she won't stop calling. So can we please just get this over with, Vox? I sighed dramatically. Fine, but on one condition. An hour later, Greg and two other board members knocked on Karen's door. I watched from my porch as they handed her a formal warning for trespassing and unauthorized property. Tampering, Karen's face went white. What I was simply enforcing. "Community guidelines," she shrieked. Greg sighed. "Tampering with someone else's property is not part of the guidelines." Keon pointed at my yard, her voice climbing an octave. He turned his yard into a bike lot. Greg shrugged. "Nothing in the rules against a bike rack, but oh, and by the way," he added, "since you felt so strongly about outdoor aesthetics, we've scheduled a full property inspection of your house." Next week, Karen's jaw dropped. "What for your own request?" Greg said with a perfectly polite smile. "Since you're so invested in following rules, we'll make sure your home is 100% compliant as well." Karen sputtered her face, turning an alarming shade of purple. She opened her mouth, then slammed the door so hard it rattled the porch light. Mark turned to me. "Dude, you just reverse Uno Karen into getting her own house inspected." I nodded. "And that's why you never start a war. You can't finish for the next few weeks." Karen kept eerily quiet. No more complaints, no more notes, no more tape measuring my yard like a psycho. It was peaceful, too peaceful. Then one morning I saw it. The for sale sign in her yard. Karen was leaving. I stood there, coffee in hand, reveling in the victory the great neighborhood bike war had been won, and the tyrant had been defeated as a final send-off. I placed one last sign in my yard, right where she could see it goodbye. "Karen, may your next neighborhood have fewer bicycles." She peeled out of the driveway so fast, I'm pretty sure she left tire marks, and just like that, peace was restored.